What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, Mr. Ryan Muckenhern to my right, and across from us, virtually, we have Mr. Gregg Sloan from Barnes Bullets, from the Barnes Ammunition Company. Greg, we've had this time reserved to podcast for a real long time, and we're going to talk about your Barnes Reserve ammunition. And I'd say we're going to talk about all the loadings that you guys are offering. I'm sure we're going to talk about all of them, but we're going to talk about one in particular, Ryan, it's kind of near and dear to our heart.
The 6.8 Western.
Well, you know what? We'll add that one to the list. Greg, what's going on, man?
We're here. It's a good day. Yeah, we're pretty excited about Reserve. And I'm super excited about talking about the 300 Super WSM and the 212 Bore Rider.
I know. It's all good things. It's all fun things. If you can, tell us about the Reserve line if folks aren't familiar with it yet. The why behind it, why you guys are offering this line of ammunition, and then we'll jump into some of the, what I would say, our initial offerings.
Yeah. With the Barnes Reserve line of ammunition, really the goal was to be able to offer direct to consumer. So that's one thing right up. This is only DTC, which is a new thing for Barnes. This is available on our website. And I will put in a little plug if you are a local guy listening. We do now have a showroom open in our Mona facility, which is kind of exciting, brand new. And you can buy this direct from us out of our showroom. But yeah, the Reserve line is an opportunity for us to really look at niche SKUs. It's products, perfect example is the 300 Super WSM, and we'll obviously jump more into that, but it's out of the box offering. Some of them are, things that you can't really do in a SAMI spec configuration to the general public. It's kind of some niche offerings. Maybe it's stuff that it makes sense in an ammo line, but to really tool up, go through the full cost and getting it on a factory loader, you just can't justify the business case when the quantities are on the lower side. It doesn't mean it's not a great product. It doesn't mean there's not a hardcore fan base that's wanting that. It's just hard to justify sometimes if you can't put out enough of it to really justify it to go on the loader. And so this was an opportunity for us to load some things that we've always wanted to, some of the Psalms, the 6.8 Western, the 300 Super WSM, and a few others, where it's really just DTC. And the really unique thing here, this is hand-loaded ammunition. This is not factory, automated machine loaded. We make some really great ammo on those pieces of equipment and in that process, but this has taken it to the next level to really have all-out control, and it's actually our ballistic lab technicians and experts that are loading this. All of the Reserve ammunition, one by one. This is single stage equipment. This is if you were an expert hand loader looking for precision rifle ammunition at home, you're going through the same practices. We're also selecting just top of the line components, the best brass available, good propellants, temp stable, low standard deviation loads. We're spending time on load development, the right primer, bullet, cartridge, powder combination to really give those end users who maybe aren't hand loaders or maybe don't have time to hand load, they're getting that level of quality and performance from, I don't really want to call it factory loaded ammunition because it's not machine loaded, but offered from Barnes to the consumer, that premium opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it really is hand loaded ammunition from the factory.
Yeah.
What the thing that I like is, we do have these I'll call it, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like micro markets, right? Like, you have your SOM enthusiasts, you have your 6.8 Western enthusiasts, you have your 300 Super WSM enthusiasts. But yes, is there demand? Are there cult followings for these cartridges? But maybe not the demand to, at the retail level for those guys to be like, yeah, we want to bring in this SKU, we want to stock this. Like, it's likely not going to happen. But what you guys are doing, you're providing, a conduit to say, hey, there is this demand. We can do it this way, which is at a very high level, and get the consumer what they want. And I'd say the consumer that oftentimes, might be interested or an enthusiast in regards to these cartridges, they are likely seeking a higher level of precision and accuracy. So to me, it ties a really nice bow around everything, and it's just a cool program that you guys started.
Yeah, and it also gives us opportunity to, you're exactly right. It's kind of more those smaller groups. I mean, 6.8 Western's a good example. It's been our most popular since the launch. When we knew that going into it, we've had a lot of demand for 6.8 Western, and there is a lot of back and forth on, the business case for that one in our normal ammunition lines, and maybe someday we'll get there. But Reserve was the opportunity to really kind of test the market with something like a 6.8 Western. But then also like the 300 Super WSM, it allows us to go outside of the box. If we go full retail through our normal channels of distribution and dealers and retailers, it's a little bit more difficult at times when you have kind of those custom configurations. Maybe we purposely load a projectile that requires a faster than normal twist rate, for example. A custom rifle guy may know that. An enthusiast hand loader may recognize that. A guy going out and building a gun around that projectile, around that cartridge configuration can understand that. But the general public, a guy that goes and buys a gun off the shelf and buys ammo off the shelf, they don't always fully grasp, all the details that matter. And so where we can go DTC, we have a little more tight control over ensuring that the message is to the consumer. They understand what they're buying. They're buying it direct from us. We're doing better on education to help them understand when they're in those niche offerings that, hey, this 300 Super WSM, for example, you can't just go fire this out of your Sammy Spec 1 in 10 twist 300 WSM rifle.
You could. It would just tumble like crazy.
You could. Yeah. Exactly. You could. You're not going to get good accuracy. It's not going to be unsafe or anything, just really poor performance. And so hopefully that also opens up opportunities for us to do some cool stuff in the future, whether it's additional kind of custom configurations like the 300 Super WSM, or it's just simply, one that comes to mind, and this isn't me saying we're going to launch this, but I look at like the popularity of a 7mm PRC, right? It's an awesome cartridge. It's been doing great in the market. We built that 160 grain LRX. That's a great projectile, has an awesome BC, good function window, great accuracy. You could argue, hey, if I'm a custom gun guy and I built a 1 8 twist 7 Rem mag, and I can seat that bullet wherever I want, as long as it fits in my magazine and isn't engaging the riflings, I'm not worried about a SAMI cartridge overall length requirement. You could make the argument, well, I can do everything a 7 PRC is doing with my 7 Rem mag if I shot that same 160 grain bullet with the 1 8 twist. So that's a good example. We could load something like that in the Reserve line that we would never do in a standard, mass-produced factory ammunition line.
I think it's really neat. So having been to a number of different commercial ammunition manufacturing plants, when people are wondering like, well, okay, is this better or worse than the stuff that I get off the big machine? And I'm imagining that you folks at Barnes do the same, but when the ballisticians are starting to spec the loads that you'll eventually see as a commercial offering, like all of this is done on manual equipment in a small room with a bunch of nerds making really high quality ammo. And you're like setting the bar for what the spec is to be adhered to at that level. And then it goes out into the mass production floor and we're tooling up to make, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of pieces of ammunition. This is like the step right before it goes to mass production. So it's like, think of this like a bakery. Like this is the baker's reserve before it goes full out. So the most control that you could possibly have over the creation of this product is done at this level. So like best foot forward. And the offerings that you have, all of them too, I think are super intelligent. And, especially like the SOM and the 6.8 Western guys, like the shooters who know what those 3 cartridges are aware of their capabilities. And unfortunately, the rest of the ammunition market has left them hamstrung and they don't have stellar options, right? And in the case of 7 and 300 SOM, you have zip. And then now you've brought it back to life. And I think 6.8 Western, there's 2 commercial loadings or manufacturers making ammo for it. Now 3 with you folks.
Well, I'd have to imagine too, for some folks that are out there that have rifles chambered in a 7 SAUM or a 300 SAUM, you're bringing their rifles back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was really the goal with those. You know, there's a lot of those guys out there. Like I said, the 300 SAUM, for example, like it was pretty popular to stay. Now the 300 Wisdom beat it out, no doubt.
Naturally.
Yeah, naturally, sure. But the 7, no, but the 7 SAUM, I think you hear more about it. I think it's kind of caught on more as that kind of hand loaders, custom rifle. You know, there's guys shooting matches with it. There's guys building long range hunting rifles with it. You know, maybe there's guys doing it with faster twists. It kind of had this little cult following, I think, on more the enthusiast hand load side more than the 300. But there's a bunch of factory rifles, you know, not just Remington 700s. There's some others, but how many just Remington 700 factory rifles are sitting in some guy's closet, and he's not a hand loader. And like you said, he can't even use that gun anymore. You know, this gives an opportunity to break that rifle out and still use it. And, you know, one of my lab guys, he obviously hand loads, so he wasn't in that situation, but he has one of those factory Remington 700 and 300 SAUMs from many years ago, and the gun just flat out shoots. And he actually brought it in when we developed this load for 300 SAUM. We used his rifle as just one of the gut check factory rifle tests. Just, you know, we obviously qualify everything in test barrels, but we want to test as many actual rifles as we can just to get that real world end of the day, you know, what is a guy going to see at home? And, you know, that plain Jane hunting weight synthetic stock, you know, like more or less a synthetic 700 SPS. I mean, it's shooting half inch with this reserve ammo. So pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is.
Greg, we've talked about a lot of the initial offerings right now, but can you go down the line of what you guys have right now? And I'd say I'd imagine there's a high likelihood you're going to be adding to it over time, but
yeah. So starting with a 257 Weatherby, it's an awesome round. You know, we've had a good history with Weatherby. Barnes has always meshed well with the Weatherby cartridges. Weatherby loads a lot of Barnes projectiles and has for many years in their ammunition. It's one that's always kind of been on our radar. We've always looked at adding it to our ammo line. We do load 300 Weatherby in our normal line, but we don't load 257. And so it's one we've always wanted to look at. Weatherby offers a load with 100 grain TTSX. It's a great round. And so we really selected that 101 LRX just kind of differ from that Weatherby offering, kind of bring it with a little bit modern projectile. So 257 Weatherby 101 grain LRX is one of the offerings. That one's going 3,500 feet per second. That is a 26-inch barrel, so keep that in mind. That cartridge, I will note, because I have seen a few things pop up online, there are a handful of 24-inch guns out on the market. The 257 Weatherby and the propellants in that burn rate, that is not the most efficient cartridge ever. You start cutting the inches off the barrel, you're going to notice it more than, say, a 7PRC with a 20-inch or 22-inch. And so, we're getting 34, we're averaging about 34 to 34.20 out of 24-inch guns.
Wow. I mean, that's still, you know, impressive, impressive velocity. And I like how you guys differentiated there because there aren't a lot of 257 Weatherby options out there. So to give a person, you know, an option from Weatherby, an option from you guys, it just, you know, diversifies the palette that a person can choose from. So,
yeah, and it's an awesome cartridge. I mean, flat shooting, obviously smoking fast. I don't know if you could argue if there'd be a better open country, just pronghorn, mule deer type cartridge if you want just a point and shoot. You know, in today's world, obviously, everything's rangefinders and ballistic solvers and scopes with turrets that helps account for bullet drop. But it's hard to argue a gun that can point and shoot with a 300-yard zero and just flat out hammer stuff out to 450.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of utility in a gun that is literally a set it and forget it, and you know if you're in range, you're in range.
Yeah, and then the next one in the line is the 6.5 by 284 Norma. This one's kind of a fun one for me. I may or may not have had something to do with it getting in the line, regardless if anyone else wanted it. But it's been one of my favorites forever. It was actually like my first I'll call it like semi-custom rifle build that I ever did almost 20 years ago was a 6.5284 Norma. It's always been an awesome cartridge, super accurate. You know, I know the 6.5 PRC has a ton of popularity in the last however many 3-4 years it's been out or more. And in reality, a 6.5 you're shooting basically the same projectile to the same velocity as a 6.5 PRC. You know, I think you're doing it with more class, a little bit better case, but whatever. That's
funny. And there were a couple of semi-custom factory rifles chambered in it. I hunt with a guy that runs, I think he has 2 Coopers chambered in 6.5 284.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a completely obscure custom cartridge. It's fairly prolific. I mean, and it is a damn fine hunting round too when you really look at what it can put up. So, yeah, that was a cool offering. I wondered too because I know that you're an unabashed 6.5 284 fan. I figured that you probably said there has to be just this one more, and
yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, and again, it's some of these they're small runs. They're all small runs, and so. You know, I mean, we're not saying any of these aren't available anymore, but some of these are going to be testing the waters. You know, maybe 6.5 284 is around and we don't build it again and we'll do something different. But it's a great round. I've killed antelope, mule deer. I've killed elk with it. You know, there was, you know, you mentioned rifles, Savage, you know, they built the F-class. They actually did even some long range, I can't remember the exact model, like a 110 long range hunter. Seems like about 7-8 years ago, they were chambering that in 6.5 284. So there's a few rifles out there, as well as you know, quite a few custom setups as well. But so 6.5 284 with the 127 grain LRX, and then we have the 6.8 Western with the 155 LRX. So that one is definitely the most popular of the line. We loaded the most of it and we sold out with that first run. Yeah, we'll actually be loading more of it. Hopefully next week. We got more brass showing up. So
yeah, that's a cartridge that I get asked about all the time. Because on paper, you look at it, you're like, man, that really is good. Like that is the bullet weight for that caliber where like magic is unlocked and then they're able to move it at that velocity. It's just a limited ammunition that's out there. I mean, what's out there is good. You know, there's not like bad bullets that are being loaded in it, but like the potential has not been completely unlocked yet. And I'm always leery with that cartridge because I'm like, well, you've got like 2 rifle manufacturers that are chambering it, and they also happen to be the same 2 that then have the ammunition for it. So if you buy one, find a load that shoots in it and then buy all of the ammo that you can, because I don't know what that spells for longevity. And then when you guys bring this out, like, okay, now we're kind of paving the road to keep this thing around. And it really is a marvelous cartridge. Like it really is.
Well, it seems in the cartridge world at times, you know, whether or not a cartridge takes off, lives or dies, it's almost like this who's going to blink first between you know, the ammo manufacturer and the rifle manufacturers. Is like, you know, and somebody's got to go. So maybe, you know, for some of these, this is like a nice step where, you know, other people can look at what you guys are doing and, you know, test the waters and be like, okay, maybe we want to, you know, elevate what we're doing here and maybe, you know, offer some things in these cartridges again, or, you know, revitalize some cartridges or I don't know.
Yeah. And one thing I think it's worth mentioning as well is, you know, I did already say that we were using top of the line components, you know, brass being a big one. You know, obviously this is not inexpensive ammunition. You know, it comes at a price. It's hand loaded, premium components. You know, I think, but it needs to be recognized that if you were a hand loader, just sourcing the components alone, I mean, we're using ADG brass on the majority of these. You know, go price just the brass. Plus the propellant that we all know how much propellant is right now, especially if you're talking extruded, you know, powders that everyone's wanting. Some of these cartridges, they're not inexpensive anymore, so it costs a lot to manufacture. But the point I'm getting at is a cartridge like 6.8 Western, it's been debated quite a bit around barns. We've definitely looked heavily at it, of loading it in our other main ammunition lines. And we require a lot as an ammo company. All of our ammo is premium ammo, right? We use good quality brass regardless. But something like ADG doesn't always fit into, you know, the whole business case to go load it in a normal ammo line. It's just too expensive. And so reserve was a way for us to also offer something like 6.8 Western with a quality piece of brass like ADG and still be able to make sense for the consumer and for the overall business. But I hope that it sells like crazy and it really proves to us and everyone at Barnes that there is demand for 6.8 Western, and hopefully that only opens the door for us to bring it into other lines and come out with some other offerings at different price points as well.
Sure.
For sure. What else going down the line after 6.8 Western?
So that brings us to the 7 Psalm with the 145 grain LRX. We talked a little bit about that one already. That one's done really well. I was kind of curious with those, with the 300 and the 7. I'll bring up the 300 Psalm right now. We loaded the 175 grain LRX. It was a little bit of a guessing game which one was going to do better. I knew that there would be demand for both. Like we already mentioned, there is that cult following of those cartridges. And it's been interesting because the 7 has definitely outsold the 300 so far. So time will tell. But yeah, 7 Psalm 145, it's been a great load. Good accuracy out of that one as well. We hold all of these in the reserve line to extremely tight specs. But the next one would be the 300 Psalm with the 175, like I mentioned. And then that brings us to the 300 Super WSM with the 212 LRX bore rider to finish up the initial line and launch of reserve.
When I opened the box the other day and I saw the head stamp on the brass, I thought exactly what you were talking about earlier. Like if you're a hand loader, and I'm a hand loader, to source the components alone, like I looked at this and I literally just said, oh, sweet. I think I ordered 700 212 LRXs a couple months ago. And now it's like, well, I kind of don't have to worry about it anymore because here it is. And this is better brass than I'm using. And like, I think this brass, if you go buy it, it's like $3.50 a piece. And so when you look at it, it's already done. To quote Boardman, he just buys the ones that are prepackaged in the box in quantities of 20. This is pretty cool. I mean, this is super cool, actually. Not pretty cool. It's super cool.
Well, and really, I mean, the story behind, some of the demand for this configuration is pretty cool too. I mean, we had you guys on the podcast and we've talked about this, this part of the story before, but I mean, you guys had been doing this, but just on like oh, hey, this is a really cool thing that we can do. We get incredible performance out of that. And, I mean, it certainly sparked something in us over here. We got, it made too much sense not to try it and have some fun with it. And here we are today. What did you guys see? The 300 Super WSM Cartridge Talks video project that we did is definitely one of our, more successful productions that we've done. What did you guys see after that as far as feedback from the community? Yeah,
it was awesome, and I definitely credit you guys on that, because you're exactly right. The 212 bore rider LRX, I've kind of told the history of that a few times, but it really was just such a unique projectile, and we didn't really have a very good outlet for it. Honestly, it's just a bullet. It was kind of, we tried to explain the opportunities of how to even go shoot this. It really is one of those bullets that you have to go almost build the gun around the bullet. Not even so much the cartridge. I mean, that's obviously a big piece of it, but it's like that projectile. Like I want to shoot the bore rider. How am I going to launch this? What am I going to chamber it in? How's it going to be configured? And that was kind of the goal. We ended up launching it in the LRX line because it was just so unique. And obviously it's not even a normal LRX because it's a bore rider. But it had been out for a little while, over a couple of years actually, when you guys did the whole 300 Super WSM series. And from that, I mean, it was an immediate response of, I was getting questioned at trade shows. I had guys coming up to me at SHOT Show and at NRA this past year asking about 300 Super WSM, asking about the 212. Had guys coming up with, different ideas of how to launch it. Hey, could I do a 300 7mm PRC and get a little bit more case capacity? I heard that one a couple times. And then it was neat to see because we actually for sure saw an immediate increase in demand of that component bullet this past year with that 300 Super WSM video series that you guys did. So credit to you guys for sure. It was awesome. We've definitely got a good response from that. And so when we got talking about this whole reserve line, that was definitely, You know, I would say if there was 2 cartridges that were top of the list for us that reserve made sense, it was 6.8 Western and 300 Super WSM. I mean, really, that was what kind of defined the line. And then obviously these other offerings make total sense as well to round it off for the initial launch. But really, from the objective from Barnes, the inside, it was, this is the way for us to offer 6.8 Western to the market, and this is for us a way for us to offer a loaded 300 Super WSM with a 212 bore rider. And I think you guys did a good job of telling that story of how to go about the gun build, that a guy that isn't a hand loader can now say, hey, I'm going to go get a rifle now. I'm going to go have something built, configured, whether it's a long action, 1 8 twist, to be able to mag feed it, or if he's willing to just single feed him on a short action with the 1 8 twist, however it be. But it's been pretty neat to watch.
I had a good chuckle. I was in Massachusetts a couple of weeks ago at a trade show, and predominant clientele there is like archery hunters, and then short range, like big woods deer stalkers. And on the first day, I had 2 guys come up to me and ask me exactly, they wanted a punch list. What do I need to build a 300 Super WSM? And it's like, well, you hunting out west with it? No, it's super cool. And maybe I will. And then 2 other guys on day 2, and this is a small trade show. There's, I think, 3,000 in attendance.
Well, and like you said, not necessarily the market.
Yeah, not the place where you'd expect to have this conversation. But 2 other guys that came over that had built one. And I said, well, hey, did you know about the new launch? Because it coincided with the show, I think, maybe a couple days before you guys had announced reserve. And I said, it's factory loaded now. You can buy it from Barnes. You go on their website right now and add it to cart. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing. Because they were trying to get my load data and like, I don't really like to divulge that, for safety reasons. But I said, yeah, just go buy it. And they were just jazzed. And I thought, of all places, Western Massachusetts, in the middle of the woods, these folks were excited about it. And I had a customer from Florida come into the showroom just the other day. Oh, he's split resident, so he's got Florida home and he's got a Wisconsin home. He built a Super WSM, built it on a Tikka. He's using an unknown munitions magazine, feeds flawlessly. It's outstanding. I wish I would have known about that magazine. You know what? We built a nice rifle. It's really good. It shoots really good. I'm not upset about it. But the Tikka is such an easy platform to work on. And he had the same builder that did the Super WSM for us. Put that together, and even our builder, Matt Peterson over at Peterson Precision, I think he told me the first day the video was out, he got 12 calls. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, cool.
Well, and they weren't necessarily inquiries. People ordered some rifles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And now there's a turnkey solution, because that is the barrier for this particular chambering. Is like, until reserve, like you had to hand load it, and which is, I think, fun, right? But not everybody wants to go drop $1,000, $1,500 onto a reloading setup and get going on it. And now they don't have to. Now, if they've got a local builder, this is easy. I mean, it's actually easy.
The big thing for me right now, Ryan, as you know, I basically just got done building my dream 300 WSM.
Yeah.
And then now I feel like I need to do it all over again.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's the answer I was looking for.
Yes. What you really need to do is get that Hell's Canyon Armory magazine so that I can load the 175 LRXs to that COAL that I had determined was just nuts in your rifle.
Oh, the one the one that shot one ragged hole?
Yeah, one ragged five round groups, ragged hole, single digit SDs, smoking fast velocity, 29 and change for the 175 LRX.
I mean, if that's what you're into. Speaking of ragged holes, though, so I grabbed some of this. You'll notice there's a few empties in here, Ryan. I grabbed it before the podcast because I was out last week. We'd gotten this in right before I left. I'm like, I gotta shoot some of this stuff before we podcasted. By the way, our rifle it's zeroed now. But I fired the first shot, and I'm like, okay, cool, and because we'd put that new stock on it, and I fired the second shot, and then I had to get the spotting scope out. I'm like, there's no way that I missed the target. And I'm like, oh boy, those went through the same hole. And then I think I got a little nervous and I pulled I was like, no! But man, it shot, I think, overall, like it was shooting about like
0.3, you said?
Yeah, 0.3, yep. 0.3 of a mil. And I was like, I mean, that's as good as I can shoot too. And even like the variance was more horizontal than anything else. So I'm like, am I getting a little bit of fishtailing there, perhaps? Anyway, it shot really well. Yeah, super solid velocity, good SDs on it. It was. I don't know. Like you said, Ryan, it is a turnkey solution for a person who is essentially interested in building a rifle around that bullet and being able to shoot it. It just, depending on what you're trying to do, what you want to do, it certainly can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
What speaking of bore riders, Greg, what is the future of the bore rider bullet design, and are we going to see it offered in, say, like a 7mm or something like that?
Yeah, I can't officially answer that. I'll get in trouble. But I can say it's definitely been looked at multiple times. It's being looked at. There's been some more talk recently on the design side with the team here. We're looking at it. We've got a few things drawn up. I think there's definitely potential. Obviously no committing, no official announcement, but we don't want to stop with the 212. There are limitations. There are challenges. I think we've kind of talked about some of those before. The 30 cal allows you to hit that weight class that we want to within a 1 in 8 twist. 7, I think we could do it. We're going to have to go faster than what I'm going to say is faster twist rates than what's kind of more conventional. But if we can get in rifle builders doing 1 in 7, maybe 1 in 6.5 type 7mm 284 diameter barrels, I think there's some pretty cool potential for a bore rider in 284 diameter.
Wow,
that would be sweet.
Yeah,
this is pretty sweet though. I don't know how you can't love the 300 WSM offering. It's pretty magical.
It can do some wild stuff.
Yeah, and I know, like, we've talked the history here. There was a lot of guys at the plant just doing this kind of before we'd even launched the bullet. Before the bore rider LRX was even a component, we were out shooting these in the field just because we built those prototype bullets and we wanted a way to go use them because we were so excited about the performance potential. It's 0.705 BC G1. 367 G7. The thing expands down to 1,600 feet per second. We test that to over 1/2 inch average diameter, expanded diameter at that velocity in our water tank. You start to do the math, what that means for, long range lethality and potential on game. You guys know what you saw when you went out and did the long range gel testing. But it's kind of funny because I don't personally have a 300 Super WSM. I've never built one. I went a different route early on, and I built a 300 Norma. That was what I actually shoot the 212 out of. And then I ended up modifying a 700 action to levels it probably shouldn't be modified to in order to mag feed said 300 Norma as well as the bolt face, but it works. So my personal rifle to shoot the 212 is a 300 Norma, but it was funny because my oldest son, when we launched reserve, he was all excited about it. I was telling him about it. And he was asking about the 300 Super WSM. He's like, hey, do you have because I have a lot of rifles. My boys are into hunting, they're into shooting, but there's probably a lot of guns in the safe for them to keep track of what's what. They're getting a little bit better as they get older to know which rifle's which, but there's guns in the safe that they're just like, it's another rifle that my dad has, So anyways, he's like, hey, Dad, do you have one of those 300 Super WSMs? And I was like, no, I don't. He's like, oh. You should probably get one because I want to use it this year. So
I've got the punch list. If you want to know what you need, Greg, just let me know. I'll send it over. I have I've got hyperlinks to everybody's website for everything that we used. And I just forward that on. Guys are like, what is that build? And I've done that, I'd say 12 to 24 times since. So it's super cool. I'm pretty excited. I actually have everything but a stock right now to put one together. I have until December to get it done. So yeah, I need to get on that.
We may just want to share this one, Ryan. It seems to be shooting.
You don't understand what I just said, Mark. I have until December to get this done.
Why am I trying to talk you out? I was just trying to tell. Why am I do as I say, not as I do? Because I was just telling you that I was gonna. Anyway.
Yeah.
Greg, it seems like, or it appears, you guys have a fair amount of flexibility within the reserve line. For customers that are out there that may have, the thing that they've been looking for forever. I mean, is that something that they can, contact you guys and say, hey, I'd love to see this, or I'd love to see that, and let you guys know and give that feedback, and maybe it is something you guys want to do down the road?
Yeah, we definitely want the feedback. We want input. What do we want? What does the end user, what does the consumer want to see next? We don't want to stop with the cartridges we launched. We definitely want to add to the line. So definitely reach out, email Barnes, reach out on social media, whatever it be, give us that feedback as to what you'd love to see in the reserve line, because we definitely want to be able to build upon it. And we have some other ideas as well. I don't want to divulge too much, but to kind of take it to the next level with those types of requests, some other, not necessarily with reserve, but some other custom type things that we can hopefully grow to. But I think this is a good start to, like we said, get those offerings to the marketplace, that whether it's, something like 6.8 that's probably more mainstream than the rest in today's world, or if it's 300 Super WSM with a 212 that's way outside of conventional configuration of cartridge and overall length and twist rate requirements, or who knows what's next. But yeah, we definitely want the feedback. I'd love to hear what the masses would like to see added to this line.
Yeah. You guys still real keen on getting handwritten letters?
I'm not too into it. If somebody wants to, write Mitchell or somebody else.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. But we'll take them. We'll still take them. But an email works. An email, a phone call. I'm trying to get with the times a little bit more. So
understand.
It is cool. You take a cartridge like that 6.8 Western, which is one that I look at, and I mean, I'm definitely drawn to it. And it's one of those cartridges, for the last, few years, it's like I find myself, I don't own one, which I guess maybe I'm part of the problem, not part of the solution, but I'm rooting for it because it should succeed. And, it's cool that, I think you guys could definitely play a role in helping it do that. And I'm not implying that, it's, failing or faltering or anything like that, but it's one of those, you're like, man, I'm surprised, more rifle manufacturers aren't chambering rifles in it and things like that. So maybe this will be part of the push that it needs.
I hope so. Yeah, that'd be neat to see. Like I said, I'd love to see some other rifle manufacturers start to chamber it, because I'd love to be able to add it to different ammo lines. I understand that not everyone can afford or doesn't even need the performance level that reserve is at, and it would, whether that's a harvest line or in our standard Vortex LR or something like that can, or maybe just Vortex with like a TTSX. There's opportunities with 6.8, I think, as well as others, but it's a cool round. I personally, I hadn't done a ton with it until probably the last year and a half. I did put a rifle together for my brother about 3 years ago and messed with it a little bit, but that was about it. And then obviously in the lab, we'll use it here or there. We shot load data for it that we put on the website, so we'd done work with it, but until reserve, we hadn't done as much. And now we've got multiple test barrels chambered in 6.8 Western, multiple accuracy barrels. We've brought in a handful of rifles to do kind of that end of the day real world testing out of the rifles. Just this week, in fact, we had a Tenacity Firearms rifle built in 6.8 Western. I started doing some work with it with the reserve, and so I've shot them more and more, and it's starting to grow on me a little bit. It gives you a good performance level. It doesn't have a ton of recoil. I could definitely see it as a good open country kind of, not just Western big game. It would work for across this continent, but it's a good option for somebody that wants to, whether that's you're shooting 1-200, maybe you want to stretch it 400 or 500 yard capability, or even further than that, but something that you can reach. I always look at the length of the system as well, right? More and more, like many people, we're shooting suppressed, we're hunting suppressed. You guys know I've made mention I'm a 280 Ackley fan. My personal rifle is a 26-inch barrel. I go throw a can on a 26-inch barrel and try to hunt with it, and it just doesn't work all that awesome. And so I look at something like a 22-inch and 6.8 Western, still getting good velocity with that 155, with the suppressor on it, can still reach out there, super accurate, manageable recoil, and it starts to be like, all right, this is probably a good option for a lot of hunters.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it is. absolutely. I'm in the same boat with my 280 AI. It's 25 inches finished. And when I put a can on it, even a short can, it's like, man, it's like putting a canoe in my backpack. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
You do become your own cell phone tower,
That's
which is
true.
nice from a comms perspective.
Yeah, that is true. I've recently thought that gun might get rebarreled to 7 backcountry, but we'll see. We'll see. I wanted, if I can load 7 backcountry, I'm in. Then there's full committal. They haven't given me the green light to do that yet. So, and actually, maybe I don't need to. You know, there's a 168 TTSX offering in there. Is it one? Yeah, 168. Yep.
Yep, 168. Yeah, we sell that to Federal. They're loading the 168 LRX.
Or LRX, excuse me, not TTSX. Yeah, LRX. Yep.
It's a good offering. I've heard good things about that Federal load with the 168 in 7 backcountry.
Cool.
Very groovy.
Ryan, you got anything else on the reserve line? Any questions you've been reserving for the end?
You know, I'll say this. You may not know this, listeners to our production, but I am a big fan of Barnes bullets. And back in the day, I would submit emails and I would get responses from Connie Brooks about them. And then I ended up in the Barnes newsletter a couple times. And what I've always loved about you folks is that you're a very small company with respect to approaching. And you do listen to what people say. And as I have collected Barnes hardcover load manuals over the years, and I go back and I see bullet diameters for the old African hunters, like a throwback to Fred Barnes, and then when Randy and Connie took it over, just the offerings that you've always had have been something that only a company like Barnes could do, because on a larger scale, everybody would just shut it down right away. And so to see this and to see that continuation, I just love it, because now these offerings for the people, like especially the SOM shooters, that have had nothing for now almost decades, which is crazy to think about. I think the last SOM I sold was either a Ruger 77 all-weather or a Remington 700 XCR that I bought on closeout. I bought, I don't know how many, 50 of them. And then we sold them because they weren't moving, and because there was no ammunition that was worth a hoot for it. And now we're bringing life back into those. You're nimble, and this is opening up a whole bunch of R&D possibilities, I'm certain, for you folks to just be able to play with things and see what works, what doesn't work, or maybe turn over a rock that previously you hadn't thought about flipping over to see what lives underneath. And I just love it, and I love that. When I go to the trade show circuits, it's the same guys that are there every time. When I send an email to Barnes, it's answered like that. This is just reinforcement of that it's customer forward. This is why I can't get enough of this company, aside from the bullet performance, which is really what drew me to you guys in the first place. But I think it's great. I think it's groovy.
No, it is great. And I think, you guys are always doing R&D and developing things. And I would have to imagine that some of those things, like we talked about earlier, maybe they don't have, the demand for it to come to fruition at the retail level, but it's an outlet or a conduit to bring really cool things to life.
Yeah.
Things that you've done in the lab, and you're like, oh, now we do have a home for these things. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, and I appreciate that, Ryan and Mark both. We're excited about it. It is just that, there's a good group here that's a lot of enthusiasts. They're shooters, they're hunters. We're ballistic nuts. We're constantly coming up with, this, that, the other. This would be cool to offer. And usually the sales and marketing and the smart people on that business side get involved and be like, hey, you can't do that because nobody wants to buy it. I may think it's the coolest thing ever, but there's only 10 other guys in the world that want to buy it. So it's kind of cool from that end, because you don't have to hit the masses. We can still be successful with some of these offerings and still give those niche, and those smaller cult following groups, give them a good opportunity, good ammunition, a good option that doesn't have to check all the boxes to make it make sense overall for the mass produced stuff. So,
and I think this is a great opportunity too for somebody who's listening to this that's never jumped into the Barnes line. While I hand load, and a lot, if I find a factory load that hammers in my gun, I'm not going to goof with it, right? So was last week Friday, I have an elk tag in Hell's Canyon this fall. And so I'd been deliberating on what rifles to take, and I settled on one of my 300 Win Mags that I had done up by the guys at the Remington Custom Shop before they had shut their doors. And I had the barrel shortened to 22 inches because I'm going to run it suppressed. And so I shoot the 190 Vortex LRs in the factory chambering. And so after this barrel crop, I thought, gosh, what am I going to lose here? Like I'm going to be down into nearly .6 territory. Nope, not the case. 28.42 on a 5-shot average. And we've got 1,050 yard range. Nearby here, it's our range. And we've got 16-inch diamonds at 600 yards. And I got a hasty zero on a cardboard box at 100, and I pivoted over there.
I like that you'll still old school it.
Yeah, man. Like everybody thinks I'm some sort of super analytical robot. Like I'm a hack.
Yeah, right.
I betted the stock on that gun in about 15 minutes. And I used one piece of masking tape and some one shot for release agent. Didn't glue it together. Anyway, got a hasty zero, plugged in my data from my Garmin into geoballistics, ran out to 600 yards, and I shot a sub 4-inch group with that factory loaded Vortex LR ammo with that 190. So sub 4 inches at 600 yards. My SD, I think, was a 4.6. I can try as hard as I want to work to that level of performance on my load bench. I'll never hit it consistently. And that has been my experience with even your standard line since Vortex ammo came out, which now has been what, 15 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And I shoot the 130 TTSXs and the 150 TTSXs out of 308, 175 LRXs, the 300 AAC and the 110 TAC TX, 4570, 44 Magnum. God, what else? 3030. Did I say that one already? I don't know. I have to look at my ammo shelf. It's a lot because this stuff is that good. And again, I think a lot of that comes from the enthusiast part of Barnes, the people who are behind the curtain there, and then that small company feel where you guys really are paying attention to every single round that comes off the press. And it just works. And that's why I love it. So I'm done rambling. You know how I get.
I do.
Okay.
You're impassioned.
I am very.
Gregg, man. Well, we appreciate you joining us today. Yeah. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else that we didn't hit on, or that we should, or stuff that you guys have coming up that we can know about? I mean, honestly, you alluded to probably more than I thought we'd be able to, but
yeah, I don't think so. Like I said, as far as the 300 Super WSM, I appreciate the opportunity to get on here. I appreciate what you guys did. I'll totally give you guys credit for that. You did an awesome work on that whole series. It really got this whole idea with the 212 to life, which is cool to see from our perspective. So it's exciting. I guess I just mentioned we do have load data. Obviously, if people listening aren't aware, we do have 300 WSM data on our website with the 212 bore rider. So if you're a guy that's hand loading, there's some good powder options. I won't say what we're loading reserve with as far as propellant because we don't give that information out, but I will say it is one of the powders listed on our website in our load data. So I'll give you that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I can confirm the powders you have listed on your website are what I used when we put that together, and fantastic.
A little corroborative evidence there.
Yeah.
But, well, cool. Well, thank you, Gregg, and thank you for, all you guys do and making this super cool projectile that really, that was the impetus and the whole thing that, brought that project to life. And we're just having fun on our end, and now look where we are.
The only downside to this is now I don't have the fact that I run the reloading machine to hold you under my thumb with.
This is true.
Because now you have a factory offering.
You don't control me anymore.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. Thank you for listening. This was a fun one. Happy hunting and shooting. Maybe we'll see you out there shooting some of this Barnes Reserve, maybe even through your custom 300 Super WSM. Dare to dream. Take care, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.